Defending is such a big part of the game because we have to always press, we have to always stay in a good shape. So we're going to go over the 5 defensive principles of play so that we can understand how to press as individuals and work as a team as a unit. So when talking about the defensive principles of play, what we have to realize is that I'm going to give very specific situations. So as you can see on the tactics board, this is one situation that can happen on the pitch. What we have to understand about principles is that these are sort of rules that are going to guide us throughout the game. So you could be placed in a completely different situation, and these principles and rules can still be followed to make sure that you sort of defend the situation as best as you can. So the game has developed principles of play that help guide our decision making in moments where there's sort of lots of stuff going on. So the first principle we're going to talk about is compactness. And now if you think about what compactness means, it just means making sure everything is nice and tight. If we think about, well, I'm going to ask you the question, where is the most dangerous space on the pitch if you're a defensive team? It is in this area, because this is where a lot of the goals happen. A lot of goals are scored in this area of the pitch, and this is going to be very important because you have to restrict that space. So you have to think, how can we restrict that space? And that means giving out space out wide and restricting the space in the middle. So compactness is about being nice and tight so that you can block up the space in the middle and give the other team space where you feel comfortable. So you could feel comfortable giving this ball out wide because you know they can't hurt you from here, but they could hurt you from here. So trying to block these passes in the middle, really trying to make sure you stay nice and compact so these types of players cannot get on the ball. And now what might happen is that, there's lots of people get in the middle and it becomes really congested. And that is sort of what we want. We want the middle of the pitch to become very, very congested because that gives these guys less time to work with the ball. Typically, the midfielders are the best with the ball. So we don't want to give them the space. We want to give these guys the space because they are going to be less sort of creative with the ball, less imaginative, and they are not going to create as much danger for us. So that's the first principle, compactness. And like I said, this can apply to all positions. It's not just going to be in the middle of the pitch when you're in this situation. Your defense could be moved back on this line. We want to say nice, compact on the edge of the box so that we're restricting space in the middle because we don't want them to score. So out wide, there's less danger. So we're trying to stay nice and compact so that we block the space in the middle. So in this example, we're going to watch how they don't do it well. So in this position, look how Chelsea give this player in the middle so much space so they can actually get on the ball. They're compact, but they're not really compact enough to stop from getting on the ball. And he nearly leads to a goal scoring opportunity. So really being compact is very important because we need to stop situations like that. Chelsea recover well and they stay compact after that. But it just shows the details in the game are so, so, so important. Because if you stay compact, you stop situations like that from happening. So for the next principle of play, I'm going to really state this again. This can happen in all situations, not just what I'm showing. So you're going to get, there's transitions. The transitions are when you're attacking, you lose the ball, and now you have to defend. That is a transition moment. So when we switch from attacking to defending, we are typically quite wide. And so if you think back to one of your first training sessions where you want to play football, one of the first things that coaches say is when we have the ball, get nice and wide, and when we don't have the ball, get nice and tight. But what we don't understand is the gap in the middle, where you're going to start wide and then have to make your way back inside. So in those moments when you have to make your way back inside, there is something that we can do to make sure that we give our team the best chance to do that. So let's imagine that we are attacking. Okay, I'm not going to put everyone in the right position, but let's just imagine everyone's attacking and we suddenly lose the ball and the red team get the ball. Everyone's so far out wide, they have a lot of space in the middle, that can be quite bad. So what the blue team can do is delay. And delay is slowing this person down, so that gives us time for these players to get back into position, into our compact shape. So if we go back and say we want to be really wide, we want to be on the ball, we want to be really wide, really creative, really brave, and we get out wide, then we lose the ball. So as these two players, what your job is to block passes, maybe apply a bit of pressure, block passes, and try and slow this person's decision making down. So it could be blocking the passes here and saying, okay, you can pass that wide, but once you get there, we're going to come and be nice and tight. And what that's doing is buying your team time so that you can get back into your position, be nice and compact, and then say, okay, now we're in our position, try and break us down. So that is obviously very, very helpful because if you do not delay and say, oh my god, they've got the ball, and then you try and run back, what you've done is given them so much space, you've cut off your team's time, so this person can still be so far out wide, and now they've got space in the middle and they can hurt us. And so if you just go and watch this game on TV, transitions are the moments where so much stuff happens because people are trying to get back into position. And so a useful tool we can use is delaying the opposition so that we really, really make sure that we can get back into our shape. Okay, so for the next principle of play, I've already spoken about it a little bit. I said pressure, and so the next principle of play is pressing. So now if we just think about football, you can't just stand still and expect that the other team are not going to do anything. When you're giving them this much space, they are going to create something. So you have to go and apply pressure. But there's a couple details about pressure that are very important to get across so that when you press, you can actually have some success. So before a game or during a game, you might notice that there are certain weaknesses in a team. So you might say the centre backs aren't that dangerous on the ball. But once the ball gets out wide to the wingers and the fullback, they combine really, really well, and that causes us trouble. So what pressure could do is help guide the other team to where we want them to go. So we could say that when these centre backs have the ball, we don't care. They're not going to hurt us. But as soon as the ball gets out wide here, we really want to apply pressure and become really, really tight so that we can stop this situation from happening. So now we're going to apply pressure. Once the ball gets back out wide here, we're fine. Now we're going to apply pressure. Okay, so these are triggers of pressing, and obviously there could be different triggers depending on the team you're playing, so it will change. This is just an example. Sometimes the centre back, you don't want them to get the ball, so you go and press them really high so the goalkeeper gets the ball. It can change. But pressure is trying to force the opposition where you want them to go. So watch here as Chelsea are not pressing Liverpool with the centre backs have the ball. They're maintaining that distance and they're saying you can have the ball because we're not scared of something's going to happen. But as soon as a midfield player comes deep and gets the ball, that's when Chelsea press. They force them back to the centre backs and then they stop pressing again. So one thing I think about when I'm playing is how can I be in control? And if I just go to the attacking part of the game for a second, you want to be able to control the speed of the game. You want to be able to control the direction of the game. But there are other ways you can control the game without the ball as well. And so if you watch lots of the defensive coaches in the world, the best defensive coaches in the world, sometimes they end the game with like 20% possession, but they've controlled the game. And why is that? Because they've dictated where the game is being played. They've cut off angles to the dangerous areas by pressing and saying, you know what, you can go here, you're not going to hurt us. So what this means is that we can control the game without the ball. If we apply pressure in the right situations, what we can say is we're going to let you have the ball where we want you to have the ball. We don't want you to have the ball out wide. So when the ball gets out wide, or when maybe you're about to make that pass out wide, we're going to cut off angles. We're going to press, get really, really good at pressing in groups, force you to go to this side. Then once we're here, we're going to force you to go to this side. And what that's doing is keeping them where we want them to be. So there are a couple things we can do when we press. We can press them into an area, we can press them into making a mistake, or we can press them into making their decision faster. So pressing into a mistake could be maybe the goalkeeper's got the ball, this guy's not comfortable with the ball, and you have now pressed him into some sort of mistake and you've scored, or they kicked it out. Pressing into a decision could be, we want you to pass out wide over here, we don't want you to pass out wide here because that is closer to this left winger who is very dangerous on the ball. So we're going to block this angle, press you so that you have to play out wide here, and we're comfortable with the ball here. And now for the fourth principle of play, I've already showed it on the screen, like with lots of principles, but now I'm going to just be very clear with what I mean by this. So cover and balance is all about how can you support your team and make sure that your shape stays balanced. Because you're going to be in situations where the ball might be out wide here and you can't just stay here because you have to block the pass. So if we talk about pressing, you have to go and press, right? But you can't press by yourself because that creates space. So that means the rest of the team have to come and work together as a unit and cover. So you have to cover this person, you have to shift over, you have to shift over, you have to shift, and you have to keep shifting. All right, and so that's just one example of what cover and balance looks like. But a better example is this one. So let's imagine that for some reason this team is playing with a lot of players in the middle. They've realized, okay, we need to make sure that we outnumber them. So if you imagine like a 4-3-3 versus a 3-4-3, a 3 versus 2 in the middle of the park. So there's a lot of players in the middle, and we now have to bring our winger in to help support. What could happen is that the right back could get the ball, and then when the right back gets the ball, it's a 2v1. So if we make it a little bit more realistic, what could happen is that this left back has to go and press. But now what we've done is we've left a player open, so that means you have to cover this person. So that means this person has to cover, and then this person has to cover. So that's what cover and balance is. It's trying to make sure that you maintain a balanced shape because people are going to have to move out. You're never going to have a perfect game plan where everything's going to work. You're going to have to move out of position. But that means someone else has to take your spot and just keep providing cover and balance to make sure that you don't get outnumbered somewhere, that you don't get put in a dangerous situation. So as a player, it's all about noticing where the danger could be. And so something that this looks like as well, a better example, is something that's happened to me quite a lot because I used to play in midfield, and one thing I noticed after playing was that my centre back was very, very good on the ball. He was very good at dribbling. He was quite tall, quite fast, and he could dribble past players from centre back. So what he would do is he'd try and dribble through the team and maybe pass out wide. But what would happen is that he'd leave a space over here. And so as a midfield player, I noticed that, okay, if he's already over here, I can't provide much help. I'm not going to go and run past him and get the ball. So what I can do is cover his space so that we don't get outnumbered at the back. It could be a 2 versus 2 here. If I am up here, it's going to be a 1 versus 2. So let me come back. So that is also a way you can provide cover and balance even when your team has the ball. Now the last principle of play is going to tie everything together, and it is control and restraint. And it basically just means managing your emotions and not getting too excited. So this could mean not trying to slide tackle someone and get a red card. Just control yourself and make sure that you stay composed. Good control and restraint will be maintaining your shape. So let's say we decide that when the ball gets out wide, that's our trigger to press. So that means when the centre backs have the ball, we have to remain controlled and not go and press and get excited. So really make sure you stay in your position. When you get the ball into the trigger area, then you can press. When the ball's here, stay nice and controlled. It could also mean, say, like you've seen this person get the ball, and you start panicking. So instead of maintaining your pressing structure, trying to guide them back, you think you can win the ball, you go in and maybe foul them. Just make sure that you try and stay composed in these situations, and that you try and stick to your plan as best as possible. Stay in your shape. Make sure you press when you're meant to press. Try and make sure that you don't go out of position, and just basically try and stay composed. And this is something that comes with experience. This is something that comes from just playing more and more and more games and just trying to learn from your mistakes. When you're maybe pressing too fast, that means slow down. When you're out of position, stay back in position. So it's things like that, just to make sure that you really try and maintain a level of composure. So now to end the video, we're just going to do a quick review of everything we've spoken about, just to make sure that you can understand everything again. And if you have any questions about any of my explanations, leave them in the comments below. So the first principle of play was compactness, which just means maintaining a tight shape to block out space in the middle and don't allow them to come in the middle where it could be more dangerous. The second principle of play is delaying. So sometimes we're going to be in situations where we're out of position. We've just lost the ball, we're in a transition, we're going to be out of position. So delaying is slowing down the other team in any moment. It could even be a foul, just slowing down the other team so that you can get back into your position and get your team in a good shape so that you can defend these situations. The third principle of play is pressing. Once we're in a settled defensive structure, we do not just want to stay here because these guys can pass around. We have to move. So we have to guide the other team. Be pressing in your shape. Make sure that you stay as a big unit and identify your triggers. So it could be when the right back gets the ball, that's when we're going to be really aggressive and press so they go back to the centre backs. So that means you have to stay as a group, press as a group. The next principle of play is cover and balance. So when someone moves out of position, you have to go and cover them if the moment is right. Obviously, if they move out of position, but there's more danger where you are, stay in your position. But let's say they have maybe 2 here, this person goes out to press. That means you have to step up, and just provide cover so that you don't expose your team. And the last principle of play is control and restraint. Make sure that you stay composed, don't start pressing on your own, don't start lunging into tackles, getting red cards. Try and maintain a plan, try and be composed, and do not try and just make quick decisions and think that you can do everything by yourself. You got a team for a reason. Defenders won, and then if you make mistakes, learn from it. So that is it for this week's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed principles. Just make sure you try and take them into your game, take them into your practice. So if you're a coach, this can guide your defensive training sessions. If you're doing like a rondo or something like that, then you know we can work on pressing or cover and balance. So just try and work on these defensive principles of play. And so if you're a player, try and take these principles of play into your game so that when you get put into a situation, you have an idea of what to do. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.